Hello, my name is Morton Rhue, and I am the author of Die Welle, Ghetto Kids, and Give a Boy a Gun. I'm going to be speaking to you today about my newest book, Über uns Stille. About 50 years ago, during the summer of 1962, my father had a bomb shelter built under our home. This was at a time when the Cold War between the Americans and Russians, between democracy and communism, was at its peak. Americans were frightened and anxious. President Kennedy had warned us to prepare for a nuclear war. Women's magazines ran articles on how to decorate your bomb shelter. At school, we practiced duck and cover drills, as if hiding under a wooden desk would somehow protect us from the devastation of a hydrogen bomb. In some ways, my father's timing could not have been better. Only a few months later, during an event called the Cuban Missile Crisis, the United States would become closer to a nuclear war than at any other time in our history. About 4 years ago, I began to think about writing a memoir about my youth. I soon realized that some of my clearest and most lasting memories came from the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt that a simple memoir would not be sufficient. So I decided to break the book into two parts. There is the part that takes place before the war, which is very much my story of being a 12-year-old boy. And then there is the second part, the fictional story of almost 2 weeks spent in our bomb shelter after an imaginary nuclear event. Here, for instance, is a chapter from the first part. This is basically the story of the day my brother, Sparky, and I discovered that a bomb shelter was being built in our backyard. The hole in our backyard was wide and deep. "Maybe it's a swimming pool," Sparky said. Could that be it? Having our own pool would be 1,000 times better than the pool at the country club. Not only because we'd be able to swim any time we wanted, but because having our own pool meant we could do Arschbombs. We love doing Arschbombs. But sometimes at the club pool, our splashes sprayed the ladies who sunned on the lounges beside the pool. And when that happened, they would complain to the lifeguards, and Arschbombas would be banned for the rest of the day. Seeking confirmation, Sparky and I raced into the house where we found Mom sitting at the kitchen table smoking a cigarette. That was strange. Usually, she only smoked on weekend nights when she and Dad had people over for dinner. But now it was the middle of the afternoon, and her gaze slanted up and away in the smoky air. "Are we getting a swimming pool?" Sparky asked. Mom crushed the cigarette out in the ashtray. "What makes you think that?" "The hole they're digging." "Your father didn't tell you?" "We're getting a bomb shelter." "What's that?" asked Sparky. "It's a place where we can hide in case the communists drop the H-bomb on us," I said. "Why?" Sparky was filled with disappointment. "You'll have to ask your father," Mom said. Drained of excitement, Sparky and I wandered into the living room to wait for Dad to come home from work. "Maybe we can get Dad to change his mind," Sparky suggested. "Maybe," I said, although I had my doubts. I'd learned a little about nuclear war from the air raid drills I'd had at school, but most of what I knew about the Russians came from the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon show. Rocky the Flying Squirrel and his friend Bullwinkle Moose were often called upon to stop the criminal actions of Boris Badinov and his girlfriend Natasha Fatal, who had foreign accents and were no good spies from a no good country clearly like Russia. The Russians were evil. Their chubby, bald-headed leader, Nikita Khrushchev, had crooked teeth and an ugly gap between the front two, which showed that the Russians didn't even believe in orthodontia. And if that didn't make him anti-American enough, there was the time he'd come to the United Nations and banged his shoe on the rostrum, which proved beyond a doubt that the commie Russians were unpredictable, violent, and crazy enough to drop nuclear bombs on us. So it would be too bad if we weren't getting a swimming pool, but maybe a bomb shelter wasn't such a bad thing either. Here, on the other hand, is a chapter from the other part of the novel, the part that is purely fictional, the part I made up. This event was born in the mind of an anxious 12-year-old boy who lay awake at night in bed, afraid for the future. In this chapter, the Russians have launched their missiles, which are now speeding through the sky toward the United States. I wake to a hand on my shoulder. Dad's voice is urgent. "Get up, Scott!" I rub my eyes. An inner clock tells me that it's the middle of the night. "We're being attacked!" Dad swivels to my little brother's bed. "Sparky!" Sparky groans and tries to roll over, but Dad scoops him up, blankets and all. "Come on!" Barefoot, heart heaving with panic, I hurry out after him into the cold hall, where we nearly crash into Mom, who's carrying an armful of things she's just gotten from the kitchen. "Hurry!" Dad barks and we scurry down the hall. In the playroom, he opens the closet door and sweeps away whatever toys and games lay on top of the square metal trap door. Outside, the air raid sirens blare. "What's going on?" Sparky cries. Mom dumps a bunch of things from the kitchen on the floor and pulls him close. "It's okay, don't be scared." But now loud banging comes down the hall from the front of the house. "What's that?" I gasp. Without answering, Dad yanks the metal trap door up and points down into the dark. "Go!" I can't see a thing. "How?" Crash! Glass smashes somewhere in the house. "What's happening?" Sparky wails. "It's okay," Mom soothes him. Then to Dad, "Hurry!" I feel Dad's arms pick me up and lower me into the emptiness. Frightened that he's about to let go, I dig my hands into his arms. "I can't see." "Feel the rungs with your feet," he commands. "Richard!" From somewhere in the house, a man's voice echoes through the dark. The metal rungs hurt the bottoms of my bare feet as I lower myself. The dark air in the shelter is cool and damp. Suddenly, boxes and bags of things shower down, bouncing off my head and arms before falling into the dark below. Already, Mom's feet are on the rungs above me. "Hurry!" Dad yells. One of my feet touches the cold concrete floor. The other steps on a box that collapses with a crunch. "In there!" a man shouts. Above me, Mom yells, "Careful, Sparky!" Suddenly, they're scratching and grunting overhead. Sparky cries out, and Mom gasps loudly. Something big is plummeting down, and I barely have time to jump out of the way before Mom crashes to the floor with a horrible thud. Sparky on her chest.